I think Westborough TV is all set, so we'll get going. Good evening, everyone. If all who are able can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just noticing that.
Oh. I thought it was up.
Projector itself is orange. If that matters.
I mean, it's right there too.
It is if it has a button. It's
Yeah. No, he has the remote.
Turn them all off. Okay. Could you drag laptop 3 into the side too? I think I just turned it off. Oh, okay.
You did that?
I did, but I think I undid it. So thank you.
Yep, there we go.
All right. I have at least one. Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Are we going to lose that one then? I guess that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Laptop 3 to the side.
Okay. Well,
We're probably okay.
okay. That's fine. I guess not.
Can only one at a time, I think.
Okay. Okay, so the first order of business, I believe, is that, well, I'll give it to Allison and then we'll have Nick present, but go ahead.
Great, thank you. Tonight I sort of organized this to sort of parallel what's going on with the agenda, so walk us through. And our first order of business is an update about our K-3 redistricting process. So Nick is here for that. Thank you.
And good evening, school committee. It's a pleasure to be back here again. Could you... I will endeavor to be somewhat quicker than I was last time. So this should be hopefully a fairly short but jam-packed presentation for a lot of information that we've been able to collect. So good afternoon, or good evening rather. My name is Nick Celentano. I'm with Dillinger Research and Applied Data, and we're here to provide an update on the Westborough Elementary School redistricting process. So today is just, can I just have next slide, please? Thank you. In terms of who we are, just Dillinger Research and Applied Data, just for folks that may be watching, is a nonprofit group from Connecticut. Our focus is really supporting schools, districts, and nonprofits around all things data. We have partnered with Westborough School District since October to help redesign what the attendance zones or what the borders are for the 3 elementary schools here within Westborough District. Next slide, please. Just to kind of reorient everybody, the project objectives, first and foremost, are to better utilize the space available at Fales Elementary School. Fales is one of the most newest buildings here within Westborough, and given the extreme differences in terms of enrollment at the elementary schools, it was sort of determined as part of the rebuilding process that a moment in time would be taken to sort of redesign what the school boundaries could look like to sort of reorient enrollment across the 3 elementary schools. Along with that, there's a great opportunity in which to promote long-term enrollment stability. And so that's really just thinking about what the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like in terms of enrollment shifts, and really thinking about how we can establish a sustainable plan moving forward, as well as help create similar student experiences across all K-3 elementary schools. Next slide, please. Just as a quick project to date, again, we started back in October on that October 8th meeting, just to kind of update everybody on where we were from our last meeting on December 3rd. We are continuing to conduct meetings, so we've met with you all twice. Following each of the school committee meetings, we are conducting different community forums. We had one on November 3rd and December 8th, and we're conducting regular strategic working group meetings, which are really instrumental in providing by school input across a myriad of different stakeholders. We have conducted a public input. That first public input was around sort of the baseline understanding of where we are. That was November 3rd to December 3rd. We had about 52 responses. Very happily, after December 3rd committee meeting with you all, where we introduced the initial 5 scenarios, we had opened up a month-long survey. We did receive 116 responses to a community-wide survey, which I thought was really powerful and really helpful. We did have within that specific surveys going to some of the multifamily housing units to receive very explicit feedback from them specifically. There were 21 survey respondents there, and then we've had 12 interactive web app participants through that medium as well. The community has also taken the opportunity to email myself and the superintendent. We've had 6 different emails, which have been very helpful. I'll kind of go into detail around those here in a second. We've conducted and are in the process of finalizing the overall demographic report that we're using to support a lot of these different scenarios. And then from a scenario development standpoint, we did conduct the 5 initial scenarios that we had presented to you back in December. And then from that and from the input, we've revised for 3 additional scenarios for your sort of consideration this evening. Next slide, please. Going forward, obviously, this is the last month, and so time is of the essence. Today is January 7th. We are showing you all the first of the additional 3 revised scenarios. Starting next Monday, January 12th, we'll be conducting a virtual and live community meeting at Fales. I kind of want to offer that up for folks to please come. We'll be reviewing the 3 revised scenarios, opening up the floor for public input. And it's really an important point because we're hosting it at Fales to take the opportunity to come and see the actual new building and get a chance to understand, why we feel it's really important to actually rebalance and get a lot of youth and students to that Fales school building. From January 7th to the 15th, we'll be, again, conducting another round of surveys to the community to get as much feedback as we can. January 16th, we're going to be doing a strategic working group meeting where we're essentially understanding and really unpacking all of the remaining input that we received, revising the final set of scenarios, and discussing the implementation of said scenarios. And then finally, on the January 21st, we'll be coming here to present to you the final set of recommendations around different options along with an implementation plan. So for the agenda for today, very quickly, we are going to go unpack that input from the surveys and the emails that we've received. We'll talk really quickly again around what are the scenario objectives and sort of constraints that we're operating within, and then go through the scenarios, the new scenarios 5, 6, and 7. So in terms of the input and feedback, like I had mentioned before, we did receive, which I thought was a very healthy amount of participation with the surveys. General survey, this was again a survey that was put into the superintendent's newsletter and pushed out to the entire community. We had received 95 responses. We also had a specific multifamily housing survey that we only sent to the multifamily housings that were sort of in play at or during the scenarios that we had sort of released. The principals themselves had pushed it out through Parent Square, and we had 21 respondents take part in that survey. Not as good as I was hoping for, and that's going to be something that we focus on during this next round of surveys as well. Good news, awareness, 72% of respondents were fully aware of the redistricting project, and so that is sort of what we are intending to try and build in terms of making sure that people are aware of what's going on. Counter that to only 24% of the multifamily respondents were fully aware as well. So a little bit of a discrepancy, again, thinking about how we can go push into some of those different developments to both build awareness and to get as much feedback as we can. Understanding, this was a little bit more aligned. 81% of respondents were very clear or somewhat clear of why the redistricting project was being done. 62% of the multifamily respondents understood why as well. So not as big of a discrepancy, but still still a slight gap there in terms of understanding. When it came to the biggest concerns, we asked 2 questions. One, what is your biggest concerns about this? And then ultimately 2, what would be your greatest need in terms of thinking through going through with the redistricting? The biggest concern, in order of how many people selected this option, you could select as many options as you wanted. Separating child from current friends, right, is first and foremost on their mind. Understandably, that is not a new thing usually when it comes to redistricting. And so just thinking about what the impact of the redistricting is going to have on their child. Secondly, introducing my child to a new school setting, 53 respondents, or about 50% of the overall respondents. That was a point of concern as well. When it came to the greatest needs, bus route and schedule specific. So, we're kind of stuck in terms of a tension point where I think some individuals would prefer to see this process take a little bit longer to unpack some things. But then on the flip side, you can see that ultimately the community also wants to know what's going to happen. And so the longer this sort of gets protracted, I think sometimes the bigger the stress and the tension it gets. Following that, a Meet the Principal night at the new school. Again, 60 respondents thought that would be a critical component as we think what the new sort of rollout of the new plan is going to be. One of the bigger reflections that I had here was that, some districts like different ways of participation. The interactive web app, not great, not a lot of participation. So I think going forward, our emphasis is really going to be on a multilingual basic survey that gets a little bit specific feedback on very explicit scenarios and or questions that we're trying to understand. That seems to be the best way that the overall community likes to engage at this time. Next slide, please. Emails. I will sort of say the 6 emails that I received were extremely helpful, provided a lot of great feedback. I think a couple things that I was able to sort of highlight, right? A lot of the emails and just generally a lot of the feedback that we're receiving are overlapping, I think, 2 distinct points. One, thinking about implementation, what is going to happen to my child? I do not want my child to move twice in 2 years. That is bringing up a lot of stress for a lot of folks. On the same vein, though, right, I like to say, implementation is different than the plan. We're not exactly getting a lot of helpful input around the plan itself. We understand the stress that comes along with the implementation of the plan, but that is something that myself and the superintendent are responding back to each person. So I do encourage anybody who would like to engage a little bit further, feel free to please email. But we are providing feedback, input, and kind of conversation and context around different concerns that were brought up during the emails. I will say this, one parent did bring up that there was an article in the Telegram and Gazette that had some incorrect information that was extremely helpful. I was very happy that they kind of flagged that. I did reach out to the journalist and we were able to correct the inconsistencies within his article, and I believe he republished it as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the major takeaways from the different conversations and feedback, and along with the working groups as well, a couple things to keep in mind. There is, I think, high general awareness. I am happy that there does seem to be awareness of the project as a whole. The multifamily housing units seems to be a trick in regards to building awareness and getting more engagement from them. So that's going to be a focus that we're going to work with the district and each individual school. Interestingly, when we thought about what's the best way to communicate, that was a question on the survey. The general survey thought Parent Square was the cat's meow. Yep, use Parent Square. We can respond to that well. We actually received more requests for email for the multifamily housing units as well. So we're going to take that into consideration as we think about how do we best push information out to different stakeholders from across the community. Priority on student stability. Again, this is not a surprise, but I do want to sort of say back what I've been hearing from the community. Separating children from friends and adjusting to new settings scares the bejesus out of parents, probably more so than the actual student themselves. And so that is first and foremost on their mind. I think in a perfect world, if money was highly available, grandfathering kids in would be their ideal solution. I have been indicating that it really is, a financial component as well that's tied to this. That is something as we move into this final stage, we'll be starting to incorporate to understand when we think about implementation. Is there even a financial ability to do the grandfathering? So that is something that we'll bring to the table as we start to think about what is even feasible from an administrative and logistical standpoint. Need for concrete logistics and safety. Again, I think folks just want to know. That's, I think also helpful to kind of get through the process. But then two, I think there was a little bit of unease when it came to thinking about transportation times and bus route times. Through what we have been able to sort of ascertain through our estimates in terms of bus driving, we're talking minutes on additional bus ride. We're not talking 30 minutes, not talking hours. So I think that is a concern. That is, I appreciate their concern. I don't think it's as bad as I think people are thinking it is going to be, given the proximity of the 3 elementary schools and given sort of the layout of some of these multifamily housing units. And then finally, the desire for alternative scenarios. I think there was a misunderstanding when we had sort of flagged scenario 1 as being sort of our starting point. And I'll sort of take the hit on this. I think the intent of the first 5 scenarios was really to understand the different ways we could approach the redistricting, both from a satellite perspective, a natural geographic perspective, and a non-satellite perspective. And so given some of the input that we received, we sort of leaned on scenario 1 because it seemed to be the best of all worlds. It does not mean, as you'll see in the revision scenarios, that we're sort of tossing everything else to the side, but we're trying to sort of merge, I think, a lot of different considerations as we move forward. So you'll see, and we did hear the community, that we're trying to provide different ways in which to think about the redistricting as we move forward. Before I push on to this, that was fast and furious. Any questions about the community engagement or surveys or emails?
I just have a quick question.
Please.
Is the primary method, I know you said pushing out surveys through Parent Square, is that basically the only way that we've done outreach?
We
Primarily, I mean, I think Nick and Katie both, or Katie attended some of the adult ESL classes earlier in the fall, and then getting the kind of community forums has been another piece. But Parent Square we've relied on as the tool in almost every case.
Okay.
So, and we've tried to leverage the principals to get the communication out as well. We've done the virtual meeting and the in-person meeting. That's why we're going to try to pull off both at the same time next week. Probably the one thing I would say we could do going into this week to make sure we're building awareness for next Monday is around maybe home flyers or whatever the case may be. It was interesting because in the surveys themselves, we did try to say like, hey, would you want in-person, flyers on the walls? Would you want in-person conversations, focus groups, whatever the case may be? And really it was email or Parent Square is the top option.
Yeah.
Even at the multifamily housing.
My only concern is I know in the past where we've used Parent Square to push out surveys, we have a large population of people that don't necessarily access those. And so I don't want that to become a problem. But I know you said there's something on you mentioned it and I missed it, but something with respect to the multilingual.
Yeah, we're working with the department, Letitia, to basically figure out a way to, we've been kind of thinking about ideas about hanging out at the bus stops or hanging out at a time home or something to that effect to kind of get those out there.
So whatever we can do would be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of our multilingual families are linked in using WhatsApp. So trying to figure out how to push things out there maybe are
Thank you.
a winner.
Is the communication available in different languages? I don't know, in Parent Square?
That's partly why we've been working with Parent Square, is because it does automatic translation. So we'd hoped that was the thing. And I think there's something missing in that universe. And that's a sort of bigger problem, I think, for the district to solve, to be honest. I think it's not just here. I think that's a kind of more universal issue to tackle.
And I think that's a great point. And one thing I do want to kind of push out is that during the in-person community meetings, we do have immediate translations that we can kind of work through as well. It's a software tool that you all have. And so that is something we offer so that we can have further conversations during the in-person if we need to.
Yeah, perhaps outreach directly to the parent groups, and also maybe I don't know if we can put flyers up in some of these, if we're talking primarily about the multifamilies here. Just to make sure that everyone's aware.
That actually was a point from, I think, 2 or 3 emails that a question of why is there not a district-wide PTO across the K-3 elementary? And so slightly beyond my scope, but, something that was, I thought, a very interesting idea in terms of sort of bringing that community together across the 3 schools.
Sure. Excellent. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Another idea could be, I don't know if you thought about going directly to those multifamily environments and trying to make a presentation there.
We have, yes. We haven't done it, but we have thought about it. And so that might be our final push here in the next week or two to try to get as much interest and feedback as we possibly can.
I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because they are potentially, going to be the most impacted by these changes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And just quickly, more so, I guess, a question for Allison, but I know, Nick, you're talking obviously about the multifamily and that they seem to prefer email. Allison, is that something, are you able to like compile and share email addresses with them, or?
We have email address that we can download by address, and so we can use that. The challenge is it's much harder to do the translation that way. So we can do that in English very easily. We may be able to do quick translation of surveys and just attach all of them and let people do the one that they want. We'll have to kind of work through that together. See.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess one more, just maybe to you, Allison, as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
I guess I imagine there are strategies that we can put together to help those families who will be moving from one building to another. That if we don't allow grandfathering children, I imagine you can bundle kids from the previous district, in the same classroom in the new in the new district or so on. And maybe we can put together some kind of documentation,
Right.
information to the parents.
Right. I think all that comes in that implementation where, you wouldn't want, for example, the kids coming from a new place into a new school to feel isolated within that new school, but you also don't want them completely, you don't want them sort of separate. You want them to actually merge as a new school, but you also don't want them to be completely separate from their friends. So that's a real balancing act when it comes to doing the class schedule. A lot of that will fall to the principals, and they're very good at that, which is great. But I think talking through parents to assure them that we are considering those things. And, if they have kind of friends or connections or social considerations that we need to take in as a factor as we're doing scheduling, we can certainly do that. I think it's important. The parent groups are going to be really important too in terms of welcoming new families as a whole family, right?
And just one more comment to that is that, just do want the public to understand that there has been a lot of thought put into this. I really do appreciate, there's a reason why some of these communities, multifamily communities, have been targeted in this way. It's because they will move as a unit, and a lot of them may know each other, already travel together on the buses, go to the same school anyways. And so that's going to help to keep these large groups, together. But I understand that obviously there's going to be other areas where we may need to, the challenge with trying to, not only do you have an assimilation issue, but then you also have an issue of, needs and, all of these different things that are competing interests to try and ensure that everyone's placed properly. Not only keeping in mind that they're with kids that they've been with previously, but also to make sure that all their needs are met educationally. So that's but thank you. If we don't have any other questions on that, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of fails modeling, one of the things we had indicated last time was that we were aiming for about 80% utilization rate. Excuse me. But given the nature of how we are seeing the demographic landscape within Westborough proper, and really thinking about some of the newer developments, there could be a potential to bump up the overall utilization of fails to a higher starting point, knowing that generally speaking, there's not going to be too many new at all facilities being built within the fails sort of existing boundary. So we did engage with the principal to sort of test out if you were to be at 85 or 90%, how would that feel? What would that look like? And sort of anecdotally right now, and we're going to have a lot more explicit examples of this on our next round of scenarios during the final set of scenarios. There was a sort of a belief that like 90% is starting to push the limits of what we feel comfortable with. And so that sort of pulls us back to, if we can aim for maybe 85 to 87%, that is definitely a process that could be doable. But I think, like I said, when we start to present the final set of scenarios on the 21st, we'll have engaged with all of the principals to say, okay, under this scenario, if you all are these different utilizations, what does that mean? What does that look like for you all? And so we'll have a better sense of what that could be, what that can mean. But that was a helpful exercise in terms of knowing that 90% is probably too far of a field that we want to go. Next slide, please. In terms of the new developments, I think this was a couple interesting pieces that were sort of layering in. But one of the ideas that had popped up during the virtual meeting was, hey, you have these new buildings coming online, just send them all to fails. And there we go. Everybody's satisfied kind of thing. And the problem with that is it's a little bit complicated and it's a little bit unknown to know if that's going to be a sustainable solution or not. So first and foremost, generally speaking, we know these 4 facilities are online. The town has approved them. And so with us working in the town and getting their feedback initially, they anticipate that actually these buildings are going to have low student yields based on the size of the units and ultimately in terms of how they're designing them. That was okay, but what we wanted to do was sort of say, okay, it's hard to sort of project, given what we know to be true about existing multifamily housing units, what that's actually going to look like. So what we did was we developed sort of 2 processes in which to say, okay, how can we best project what we think could potentially be a yield for each of these units? So we took a look at all of the multifamily housing units, broken them out by different characteristics like condos or different apartment complexes, rents versus non-rents, and tried to understand, given the basis of those types of building types, what type of yields did you see? And then basically averaged a yield that we could use to sort of project onto these new facilities. So on the bottom, you can see across the different developments that are at play, we have identified what the number of units are, and then essentially what the low range, very conservative estimate of a K3 yield versus a high range and what that could potentially look like. And so we feel, going, and the way you should interpret this is as on an annual basis, average wise, you should have about this many kids coming from that multifamily housing unit. So you can see even at the most top end, highest feeling like we're going to have a lot of kids move into these areas, the overall total population does not sort of, I would say, move the needle as much as we would want it to at fails. So even if we to do that, assuming these all came online next year, right, and instantly were filled, even then we don't feel like that's the greatest solution in the entire world. That doesn't take away from the fact that it's going to be a couple years to build these, to get them populated. It doesn't sort of also change the fact that you could actually have different families that are existing currently move into these new units. So the truth is somewhere in between. And so at the very least, I can give you a hint going into the 21st. One of the recommendations that we're going to have is you do not preemptively zone these units. And I think that should be something that the school committee actually emphatically states, that for anybody who's going to be moving into these, until they're open, until we know what we're dealing with, you will not zone them until more information is at play. Any questions about that? That will be a recommendation. Just
Yes. How many of these projects are confirmed to be developed?
these 4.
These are all confirmed.
These are all confirmed. Everything else is not confirmed as of yet.
So out of 629 units, you anticipate only 63 to 91 students.
K3
K-3 students, yeah.
Right. So if you think about it across the entire spectrum of K to 12, only that portion will be K3. And that is based on I think off the top of my head, the average yield that we calculated was about 13 to 15%.
So how many students for K to 12? I know that's not your concern. But
So 13%. I mean, you could basically average it, right? Where, let's see.
so it's 20.
If that's something, if that's data you're interested in, we can definitely pull that. Yeah,
that's a
and
smart
get that.
idea.
Yeah.
Instead of me trying to do it, I can get you the total
Because
count.
Katie kind of did. I think these folks did some analysis for us, which is useful. So, yeah.
We did it 2 different ways, kind of, I think what you're getting at. One was calculating it from just looking at K to 3 enrollment trends. And then the other was thinking about K to 3 as a percentage of the overall total population in a building. And then and we actually came to the same, essentially, numbers. So yeah, that's where, again, when we think about the next 5 to 10 years, this adds a layer of interest just because we know ideally you would like to think there's going to be way more parents coming in, but trend wise and what even the town is saying, it's probably not as much as you would think.
And in addition to these 4, there are more that are potentially being developed as well?
That is true, but they have not been approved. So that's why we don't like to touch those.
So is this year-over-year rollover in terms of the number of students you're projecting for this? In other words, right now, this is K through 3, so we're talking about 4 years.
Yeah, so let's say in 5 years, if they're all built out, on average, you should see that many kids per year go into K-3.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So then in terms of the scenario development, this is exactly the same sort of preemptive nature. Scenarios are strictly modeled at current year residency. Future, when we get to the final iterations, we'll start to incorporate, as we think about modeling at each school, current students with disability programming, et cetera. Again, and I do want to phrase this as I should have framed better, I think, the first set of scenarios, right? We are presenting these analytically as a way to test different trade-offs. And that's, I hate to say it, that is what redistricting is. There are different sort of pros and cons on every sort of choice we make. And so part of this, especially when we're thinking about getting feedback, is understanding what do you like and not like outside of your kid moving, right? Like what are some of the benefits? And we'll kind of go into some of the nuances that we pulled out on some of the newer scenarios. I do want to remind everybody, virtual and in-person community meeting at Fails is next Monday, 6:30 p.m. Would love as many people that can attend to attend, please. Next slide, please. All right, so just to, again, establish what we're trying to do, we're trying to balance our schools. That means that, and I think this is just important, right? We have to shift enrollment. No matter what we do at the end of the day, enrollment has to shift from Hastings and Armstrong, or Armstrong, but I mean, it makes sense to pull from both, to Fails. We are trying to plan for tomorrow, so really considering these new developments and thinking about where population is moving into Westborough and where it's not moving into. Thinking about that parity in education, right? Are there opportunities to move kids, like for instance, from Hastings to open up more space so that they have a little bit more creative space to be able to utilize? And then again, ultimately, when we think about one community, we're trying to make sure that each school is representative of what the overarching community looks like and feels like. Next slide, please. So just to do that, we have to move at least 100 kids. That's sort of the metric here that we're trying to do for Fails. We are thinking about what that means for utilization at Armstrong and Hastings. If we take that many kids right off the bat, there are going to be things to be able to, I think, buffers and things to play with here at Armstrong and Hastings. The geographic balance is going to be the trickiest part. At the end of the day, population density within Westborough is concentrated in specific areas, and they are concentrated away from Fails. And that is what's making this the trickiest piece. That's why I would say the biggest question when people are like, oh, wait a minute, why are you taking a multifamily housing unit that's so far away from Fails? It's because of that reason. All of the population that would need to work with is not next to Fails. And then space for programming, again, just thinking about trying to, if we're going to make, and I would say this specifically for Hastings too, if we're going to make a move, ideally what we want to do is make a big enough move so that it's creating space at those schools. I think pulling 1 or 2 or 3 kids is a waste of time, and we shouldn't do that for many reasons. So next slide. All right, so scenario 5. This is very emblematic in some ways of scenario 1. So if at the end of the day, if what you're seeing here is instead of Park coming from Armstrong, it was actually, we decided to say, okay, well, let's look at the next sort of best multifamily housing unit or next potential family housing unit, and that was Arrive. Arrive is significantly bigger than Park, has a lot more students, and sort of, again, sets the stage for what we're trying to do, which is if we're going to move kids, and we have to move at least 100 kids, there is an argument to be had about don't just take it from one school, take it from both Armstrong and Hastings. One, because I don't think Armstrong or Hastings can withstand actually losing that many kids. But then 2, because there's an opportunity to start thinking about how can we sustainably create more space and better utilization at the other buildings as well. So in these kind of contexts, and this is what I talk about trade-offs, it does logically make sense that you take some youth from Hastings and some youth from Armstrong in some combination. So in this case, we took Arrive and we took Homestead, which was existing in previous scenarios. We would keep Westborough Village, which is already zoned to Fails, and then basically send all of those kids to Fails. This gets at what we were talking about, which increases Fails utilization up to about 88%. Again, to the limit of what we're kind of comfortable, what the principal is comfortable with. I would probably say she's at the very max of what her comfortability is.
I do think we talked a little bit about, as we sort of refine this, we'll be able to see exactly what those, who's in first grade, who's in second grade, as of right now, and kind of model it out more specifically. And I think that's going to be really telling for a decision point
Yeah, I think that's going to help understand like what does make the most logical sense. This does improve demographic balance and reduces variation. For those that are interested, at the very bottom of this presentation, we gave, again, the plethora of data points that you would want to see in terms of movement. Again, some people will sort of see it and be like, you're only moving, the EL by 2%. Or 3%, or whatever the case may be. The important part is we're moving it in the direction towards averaging it out across all of the schools. That is an intent. It's very difficult for certain student demographics to get everybody onto the same page, and that is sort of a reality. I think at the end of the day, if we can move in that direction, that's sort of a positive sort of focus in terms of what we're trying to do. Again, in this case, by moving Homestead, we're going to free up instructional space at Hastings as well. So again, achieving what we're trying to achieve, just at the max level. Next slide, please. Scenario 6 kind of takes a little bit of a different tact. And so for folks that were interested in scenario 1 and scenario 2, we started to try to merge those two pieces together. So going back, Arrive has 101 kids. So if you're moving Arrive, basically not too much else can come from Hastings. Nope, sorry. Not too much can come from Armstrong because of the significant size of Arrive. Sorry. So we would go back to Park. Park has about 36 K through 3 kids, and we would sort of identify Westborough Village. Now, I'm sorry. We would identify different areas in the downtown that would also move to fails. So there's a couple different positives here. And so here, what you can see is a couple things. You have a multifamily housing unit coming from Armstrong. You have a multifamily housing unit coming from Hastings. You also have a geographical regions that are tightly close to each other within the city proper or the downtown area, which would also be going to fails as well. This achieves an 87%, again, a high level utilization for fails, and starts to create a mix of, we'll call it housing types, which was a piece of feedback that we received, which was, don't just pick on the multifamily housing units, but think about how you can sort of leverage geographical regions as well. And in some ways, given the feedback that we had, this actually kind of makes the downtown area a little bit more of a joint unit as well, that are all sort of proceeding to fails. So this was I think, a very interesting consideration as we start to think about how do we balance not just expanding fails to take up 98% of the overall city boundary, but how do we sort of maximize the multifamily housing units and the geographical regions as well. Next slide, please. Finally, I'm sure there would be a question of, well, what happens if, Homestead, I think some people feel like, well, why are you picking on us? We're, on the kind of outer end. If we didn't use Homestead, right, and just said, okay, again, thinking about the geographical regions within Hastings, could we and how can we still move kids to fails? So here, we only get up to about an 81% utilization. We're really only taking 30 kids, which could potentially move the needle, but maybe not at Hastings. And as we kind of go to sort of suggest to you on our last round of revisions, we'll come with okay, if we were to do this, what could Hastings do? Does that actually open up a classroom for them to leverage and to be able to utilize as a makerspace, or does it not? Because part of the trick, right, is going to be we could be moving 40 or 50 kids, but they're strewn across the entirety of the K3 spectrum. And so that may or may not help move the needle in regards to making space. So that could also be a consideration as we nail down to the sort of the final set of scenarios. All right, so I will just, if you could just go to the next slide real quick. Again, for those that are interested, we did provide as much detail as possible across each of these scenarios for your enjoyment. But if we can go back up to scenario 7 real quick. Any questions and feedback, concerns, thoughts from the school committee? Because it would be great to hear anything that took you by surprise or might be of interest for these scenarios.
So, anyone on this side have any questions?
I have one, which is when in 7 that we've in effect put Homestead back into the picture. Where do they normally then go? To Hastings?
Yeah, so if I'm sorry, so in this scenario, right, Homestead, nothing happens to Homestead. They just go to Hastings.
Okay, thank you.
I guess just one quick question. The only question I have is 60, so in scenario 5, it seems like Armstrong goes down to 60% utilization.
Yes.
And so does that feel too low, or are we thinking that with these new developments that there's the opportunity to then just them?
So you bring up a great point that I should have mentioned, because my colleague Katie was also like, man, that feels really low, bringing them down to 60%. That is a consideration, right? Like, what I can tell you is, given the layout, the demographic layout of where people are moving to, I would not be too concerned that Armstrong won't start to increase, or Hastings won't start to increase in population again. Again, given why we said do not zone those four new multifamily housing units, because to your point, it could be actually there's a influx of population in Hastings, and so now it makes sense to move those all of the 4 to Armstrong, or vice versa, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, that is a consideration. Again, knowing that, and that's where I feel comfortable saying starting fails high is not going to be a bad thing, because fails will not go higher. I'm fairly confident, based on how the layout of the geographic area within the southern portion, given the current boundaries, it's not going to go higher.
I have a question. So I actually liked scenario 5, just in looking at it, even originally, but in my conversations in the committee with the Armstrong principal, one of his major concerns was the demographic change that would happen as a result of losing Arrive.
Go down.
So that is, aside from the utilization, it looks like we're going up, we're increasing the non-white population quite a bit and reducing. So what is the thought about that, around that?
Yeah, I think the answer is you should split Arrive up and send half to Armstrong and half to Fales. I'm not saying you do that, but like you're moving a huge population, right? And that population just happens to be of a similar demographic. And so, yeah, I think it's partly understanding they have to go to one of the 2 schools. Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? In terms of, so I brought this up because if you look at, again, at the bottom 3 are the scenarios. And so you can see to the far right, you're right. If Arrive moves out of Armstrong, right now, Armstrong has about approximately 50% white population. That would jump up to 64% population. Or on the reverse side, you can see that the Asian population goes down from 32% to 16%. So that is a significant consideration that must be taken into account. I would say, again, and this is the trickiest part, the new multifamily housing units could be as diverse as Arrive. And so will that problem work itself out as time goes on? More than likely. Can I say with any guarantee? No. And that's the trickiest part.
Is it those multifamily units that you're depending on, or you mentioned that other areas around the Armstrong zoning are densely populated and that lots of folks live?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we look at, can you go down a slide? Keep going.
Okay,
Go into the
backwards
appendix,
or-
please. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go
Cool.
down. Into the appendix.
Okay. Thank you.
The down arrow, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Keep going through, keep going. Yep, keep going. Okay, first go up. So here it kind of indicates a little bit of where the population growth is happening. And so, yeah, in the Armstrong and the Hastings area, we would anticipate that regardless, given the trends of seeing a more diverse population move through, that as the population continues to change and grow, that diversity would increase, and it's going to increase in Armstrong and Hastings, because we're not seeing the same population growth in the southern portion. Go down a little bit more. There. And so when we think about, this is just sort of a great example of like population density, and I'll make sure to bring this during the next one, is you can see that the population densities are sort of taking place in that middle area and in the northern parts. So again, just anticipating that if I had to put my eggs in a basket, if I had to, I'm trying to mix metaphors here. If I had to stockpile in one area, I would want to stockpile in Fales, because I don't think that location is not going to change that much. This does sort of beg, I think, the consideration for you all when we think about the district redistricting, right? Arrive is really big, right? So you are moving one huge chunk of kids. There is an argument to say, could you piecemeal a couple different kind of like scenario, if we could go to scenario six, please, which does a little bit of everything. So that can help minimize, I think, such a jarring shift. But
I think for me, my only comment on that is, I agree with you. I think that that's like an ideal way of handling it. On the other hand, I think that the parent population may have more of a gripe with a scenario where you're moving some of the downtown and leaving some of it. So it's just, whereas these, I just think of the multifamily units as one unit and everyone's there and you're kind of taking it and everyone's going, same people on the same bus as they always have been. And that makes a huge.
You would be absolutely correct.
So I think we might get some negative feedback on that. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Did you have anything to add?
I do, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Nick. A couple questions, more general. So scenarios 2 and 4 are out of the picture.
No. It depends on, again, so if we think about scenario 2, and I'm sorry.
Is it down?
It is down,
Okay.
way down below. Let's just go down so
find it.
people can understand it. Okay. Scenario 2. You can see that we started thinking about, we wanted to try to build on this a little bit, right? And so, yes, I think this does achieve certain goals that we were trying to get at, which is increasing fails to 81%. I think I personally would like to see that a little bit higher. It then takes into account how many kids are actually coming from Hastings, which is about 30. Again, could be good enough. We'll know more as we model. So I think that this is totally on the table if it achieves what we are hoping to achieve. The biggest, I would say, thing that I'm concerned with about this one right now is that I'm not satisfied with 81%. I promise you guys will get a scenario that is about 80 to 81% of fails. And so that is a trade-off, right? Like, is only 81% good enough when you're minimizing the amount of movement and you're just moving arrive? I have my opinion, but my opinion doesn't matter. It's really your opinion. So, that's ultimately sort of what we're trying to get at.
So, I mean, honestly, this is, I think in computer science it's called multi-objective optimization problem.
Yep, exactly.
And so, there's no easy
Correct.
solutions for this. I can see you generate 50 more scenarios.
Correct.
And each one will have something interesting than the other. So what's your method? What's your approach right now? I see you are throwing different scenarios, gathering feedback, and trying to come up with something that satisfies majority. I mean, can we assign perhaps certain weights to different metrics?
Yeah. I want you guys, that is part of why I come to talk to you all, is I want you to help me understand what is important to you. Because like I said, getting feedback from the community is usually like, don't move my kid, right? Like, and I totally heard that and I understand that. I'm trying to work with that here. So I'll tell you my sort of hierarchy, and I tried to sort of establish this in the project objectives. We need to get students to fails. All right. 81% I think is okay. I would prefer, me personally, Nick, would like to see 85%. So as I try to optimize, that is my optimization. So like this one, almost in my mind is like not worth it because it's only 81%, right? I want to get up to 85%. That's number one. Number two is, how can we not just move multifamily housing units, but thinking about, because again, as we talk about making one community, there is this aspect that 40 to 45% of youth live in multifamily housing units. That means 50% don't. And so ultimately, when we think about how we can move and boost up fails, right, is there an opportunity to not only move multifamily housing units, but move other single family houses as well? And so that is on the table. But in doing so, the reason why I say that is because the second biggest option in my mind is, we have to take some from Armstrong. We have to take some from Hastings. It's a missed opportunity in my mind. If we're going to do this, you should try to pull from both districts to create more space. I'm sorry, both school boundaries to create more space. And so then it gets to the chair of the school committee, right? Like, which is the less of two evils, right? Do you move this population? Do you move this population? Are they all equal? Do they all feel like they have a bigger pain, or is it a better, those are very subjective decision points that I don't have a good answer for. That really kind of comes down to your all's experience, with the context and the history of it. So those are the two big things that okay. So that's two. And then the third one is, are we moving the needle to averaging out certain student demographics across all the schools? That's kind of a key piece.
So it would be also interesting to me, I guess it's more to the district, the question, how would different scenarios impact the budget, if they would, in terms of resources that we have to distribute differently in different scenarios.
Right.
Because I feel like I'm at a loss right now, to be honest. I'm looking at these scenarios, and I share Jane's sentiment that the 60% utilization in both Hastings and Armstrong will create a lot of resentment, I think, initially at least, until the enrollment goes up, because it will feel like, well, we just swapped one underutilized building for two underutilized buildings. I can see that kind of feedback, but again, it goes back to our priorities. Like what is most important to us. So
sorry, I will. That is an excellent point, and one that I'll kind of throw back at you, right?
Yeah.
The objective was not to balance out the schools, right? That was part of the first conversations we had. It's like, no, we know we're going to kind of boost up fails a little. Again, you can feel free to change that if you like, but that is the under the consideration.
I think part of the thinking about that is we don't want to be doing this again in the next 10 years if possible. So, anything we do, we want to do with an eye to where development is landing, how that's going to impact the enrollment at, within those boundaries, or do we want to kind of keep our cards close to our chest about those new developments until they come online, which I think we should do anyway, to be honest. But I do think a kind of overload at Fails. The reality at Fails is it's a gorgeous new building that's sort of optimally designed for students. So not having students in it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I think Armstrong and Hastings are in wonderful shape given their vintage. I think they're very well run. I think the educational program is sound. I think the communities are strong. They're great places to be. But the building at Vails was really built to take on more students. So it's time to make that move.
Yeah, and I think having that information session on Monday at Fails, I think it'd be great to get more parents from the other districts to come and see the school, because
so too.
it does make quite an impression when you're inside the building.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the architects are sort of after us to try and nominate it for architectural awards. It's been featured in commercials and things like that. It's a really nice place. So.
I'm almost done.
Go ahead.
So I just give you feedback on the 6 and 7. To me, it feels a little bit like it's gerrymandering, in the downtown. Because I'm looking at some from the perspective of some of the residents, they're almost in a walking distance from Hastings. Now they're going to Fales, and vice versa on the Upton Road, that neighborhood there. They're right next to Fales. They're going to they're doing it right now to Hastings. Kind of feels to me like it's not like we're gonna have buses going like this between these schools. But
yep. So there's a couple of reasons why we sort of approached it this way. We did get some feedback on, if you're looking at Fales, right, the eastern and western portion of Armstrong and Hastings technically are in a prime area in which to sort of move over, right? So you could kind of, cut the southern portion of Hastings, or as we had talked about, the north and south portion above 30 in Armstrong. The trickiest part with that is thinking about some of the student demographics and the types of homes that you see. And there, again, would be this isolation at Fales. That was the whole reason why they were moved to the other schools to begin with. So that is certainly a possibility. I would say you bring up a great point about walk zones. I will say this, I need the community to tell me that walking is important. And given some of the information that I've heard from the strategic working group, if it's middle school, I guarantee I would hear that middle school. But, I don't know how many kids are actually walking to school right now from those areas. And that's sort of where I need that community input to help inform. And so, this was an attempt to say, okay, how can we get if we're going to move somebody, is there additional ways that we can move somebody but get benefits from it? And I would say this is probably, when we think about the geographical boundaries against Fales, there are some pros to doing it this way versus the east and west side of Fales for those very reasons.
Okay, last question, I promise.
You keep saying that.
January 21st is we're gonna receive from you final recommendations.
Yes.
And
And by that, I mean, I'll give you 3 different options.
3.
That try to spread load. It's going to be hard because it's like they're the trade-offs.
Okay, but you will narrow it down to 3 options.
Yes,
for
yeah,
us.
you're not going to have 10.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, that's too much. Like I'll say this is extremely compelling, and so part of what the surveys are that we're going to put out is trying to ask, tell me what's wrong with this scenario and why this would be bad, agnostic of if your kid goes to any of these schools or not, right? Like pretend we're 5 years down the road. What's bad about this? Same thing with, again, the one additional layer that we'll do too is, again, modeling out what each of these schools look like. And I think that'll help as well, sort of paint that picture.
That'll also help with the budget question.
Yeah.
If we have a sense of what classrooms are shifting to what place or kind of what bus run was going to happen to what place, we could start to run through some numbers. They'll be a little bit loose, but when we talked about this initially, we really we think it's not going to be a major budget impact. We think it's actually kind of budget neutral because resources, we can shift most of the resources around as long as we don't do the thing where we take a neighborhood and split it into a bunch of different parts and make it sort of impossible to bus. So.
Correct.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I mean, all excellent questions. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I just have 2 comments and then I want you to move forward. But the thing is that one thing you mentioned about Fales and dividing it up with multifamilies, why are we picking on the multifamilies and single families as well? I mean, part of the issue here is that Fales already has mostly single families, right? I mean, that's what that local community is made up of. And because we know that we're not going to be getting any multifamily units in that immediate area.
Touche.
So I don't think that that's a consideration. I think that moving the multifamilies was part of the goal to try and diversify that. And then with respect to the 60%, I think it's really important that, at the community hearing that you go to, that you really highlight that this is in the context of all of these new units and multifamilies that are coming.
Yep.
They're not in the pipeline such that you can't see them. They're there. They're online. They're going to be coming through. And this we're doing this also to make, we need room. And so we have to bring kids into those 2 schools that way. So I don't see that as such an issue. For me, the biggest thing is I want this to be done with the least amount of disruption to our parents and families with respect to the friendships and the relationships
Yep.
that kids have. And I think that that's always really important. And I think the only way to accomplish that is really to take these units as a whole and move them. But
Love that.
again, all right. So I'm going to let them keep going.
Oh, no.
Oh, did you have a thing? Sorry.
So I'm just,
My apologies.
questions.
Sure, yeah. And just kind of going off of the last few comments here, I guess my primary question just about like scenario 6 and 7, understanding that there will be potentially 3 new scenarios, kind of combining all of these is I was thinking the same word as Jakub, and I wasn't sure if I was going to say gerrymander, but just kind of looking at the blob there, and understanding that this is all about trade-offs, more prioritizing. I'm just curious, and looking at 6 and 7, the downtown. I'm assuming that this this was drawn primarily just looking at the considerations of like demographics, things like that, like not looking at keeping neighborhoods together. Like, would that be correct?
No, actually, the opposite. So Katie went through by hand. And so part of this is kind of art. So it looks like we're gerrymandering specifically, but that's because what we're doing is looking in a particular area and saying, okay, what is a natural boundary in which we assume, kids aren't crossing the huge main street to get to, that's a bad example, but like ultimately there are geographical features which actually isolate out certain pockets. So it says, okay, this logically makes sense that this in and of itself is I'm trying to make this up, a multi-family geographical region, right? Like it's essentially taking the housing unit, spreading it out to a point of which it makes sense that those boundaries, like kids are not, if there's a neighborhood, we want to move kind of to your point, we want to move neighborhoods.
Right.
We do not want to move isolated houses. And so from this perspective, what we tried to do is move north, along the city boundary and basically try to capture different, it's a balancing act of capturing specific neighborhoods without maximizing too many kids movement. But, it's like, how do you find those those right-sized pockets of housing units that are tied together, but that are not cutting people in like separation.
Sure. Yeah. And certainly makes sense. I guess I didn't realize that does follow Main Street there. And I guess primarily just looking, which I think Yakub called out as well, that like, kind of smaller pocket that seems to be, further north of Armstrong and, right near Hastings. But no, I mean, I'm glad to hear that isn't in consideration.
Yeah. So, and I probably should have, we are not gerrymandering. We are basing it around housing. I think that's an important point around neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, some of the things the working group talked about really explicitly were kind of neighborhoods and that notion of trying to not create unnatural divides, people on one side of the street going one place and the other side of the street going another. And also just talking about being mindful of when there are neighborhoods that are already walking, if there are places that are walking. What the folks in the group told us is those walking zones tend to be very small for K-3. They're larger as you get older kids, but people don't tend to walk at that level. They might walk with their parents, but often they're on the bus or they're driven unless they're just right next to the school.
Mm-hmm. Super helpful.
Can I ask a couple quick questions? So first of all, over the next decade, do you project any increases in K-3 enrollment at any of the existing multifamily housing units that we already have in Westborough that could impact enrollment?
So are the yields going to change
Yeah.
at the current? That's a great question. We have no information that would suggest that would be the case given current trends. And we've seen, we'll kind of show you, I'll bring this on the next presentation, is like we have the tracking of what is the percentage of yield for each building for each year. And they're essentially stable. So there's nothing that would say that would increase. Overall K-3 enrollment, generally speaking, is, as we know, kind of slightly on the decline. So I would say best case scenario, it would stabilize, but not hugely increase.
Sounds good. And then my last question was, in the scenarios where you do move multifamily housing units, such as Homestead, especially in Arrive, have you received any parent feedback about concerns and increases in the transportation time for students at all?
Yes, that was a consideration, or rather, that is a concern of some of the parents that said, okay, it's, my kid's going to be on the bus longer. Through our estimates, and I'll have exact times. Like I said, we're talking minutes. It's not a huge distance to go from Armstrong down to Fales, especially if you're not going through the circle. So that is a concern that we're looking at. Again, trade-off, but one that we don't feel is hugely prohibitive.
Thank you.
Great questions.
When you say minutes, I know you said that, and then you said not 30, but do you mean like around 10? I'm just curious what we're talking about in terms of minutes. You don't have to do that, but sorry. Sorry, I thought
No, please. I mentioned
just
that.
ballpark. I know
wanted to look at that exact
I'm
number.
so behind
When
on
I
my
got it.
agenda. I don't like this.
It's not. Give me 2 seconds.
You're going to try again? Yeah, I'm going to try and fix the projector while we
So, thank you for thinking me. So to go, all right, from Arrive, so this is using sort of Google Maps kind of thing. Going from Arrive to Armstrong takes 6 minutes, about 2.2 miles. To go to Fales, it's 3.7 miles, so it would take about 9 minutes. Again, all things being equal with traffic and whatnot. Homestead is the difference between 3.5 miles and about a 6 mile difference. So you're talking about 7 minutes to 12-minute difference. Sorry, 7 minute ride to 12 minutes. And then Park, again, similar, it's 2.8 miles versus 4.3 miles. So it's about 8 minutes to 11 minutes.
All right, go ahead. Keep going.
Nope, this is
One-
it.
Okay, good.
One thing we talked about with bus travel time for the multifamily houses is because it's a multifamily unit, there's one stop, right? So unlike a traditional bus stop where you're like, it's like you go there, you pick everybody up, you go. So it actually doesn't, a lot of redistricting involves a lot more kind of complicated bus machinations. I don't think this one is. It's going to add on a little bit of time, but not substantial.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. So I was talking with Matthew about Acton Boxborough, right, which currently in a lottery type setting, I mean, buses go everywhere. And that is where the cost comes into play. That's where the time comes into play. In this case,
Matt, can you
because
shut that door?
because of the isolation, not the isolation, but the siloing of where the kids are, to the superintendent's point, it is fairly simplistic. You're not really adjusting anything but those 1 or 2 additional miles.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other
I think he said he's
questions,
done.
please?
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Nope.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're so
Okay,
great.
thank you all
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
I wanted to, I'm going to do a quick verbal and then hand it off to Matt. So I wanted to let folks know we've started outreach related to a calendar committee to look at the school calendar, not for next year, but for years after that, in terms of thinking about some of the conversations we've had before. I've sent out invitations. We've got dates for the group to meet. We have a little kind of training that is set up for the group, so that, because we know it's a topic that people have strong feelings about, we want to be able to have productive conversations both inside the room and outside the room. So that process is up and running, and I expect to be sending out sort of confirmation who is part of that committee and exactly where we're going to be meeting, because I have dates but not space yet. Waiting to see the size of the group. I'll be sending that out later in the week, so you can expect to hear an update about that. I'm going to hand it off to Matt to talk a little bit about AI committee work.
Great, thank you. Before we start, I just want to recognize that we are a little short on time, so I will try to be as brief and concise as I can. On my point here is I want to recognize all of the people that have served on our AI committee. And you can see it's a pretty diverse committee composed of WPS faculty and staff and administrators, pretty much almost at every level, district and school level. And I want to recognize that the committee started over a year ago and has been meeting, I would say, every other month or so. And we met extensively over the summer. And on the next slide, you'll see here's an overview of what the work has been done thus far, and then also leading into where we're going next. So the committee formed, and over the summer, we created 3 documents, and I actually have paper copies. I think it might be easier for you just to take a reference and look at it. The first document is our guiding principles for using generative AI. And I want to preface this and say that everything we're doing here is in draft form. And that is based on recommendations, because when we're talking about AI, it is a moving landscape and it's a disruptive, by its very nature, new technology. The second document we created was a student use agreement. And you can see that there, that's actually version 2. We've made iterative changes to that. And then the last document, and this is based on a stoplight approach. You can see the top 3 say yes, so that would be green light. No would be red light, and then the maybe is our yellow light, and you'll see this in some other areas as well. So we, as a committee, created these guiding documents back in the summer before the school started. Then in the fall, as some of you might remember, we had some AI professional development specifically to support our educators in grades 7 through 12, so Gibbons and high school. And that, we feel like that is the area where student use is most acutely felt, and that our teachers were challenged or confronted with it. We also recognize that teachers can benefit from some of the enhanced efficiencies that AI brings, and we're providing AI training for Mill Pond faculty and some pre-K through 3 educators. They have the choice to opt into several workshops we're offering this winter. But based on the feedback that our educators had from the fall, we gleaned that they're really desiring more of a comprehensive AI implementation plan for our district. So we listened to the teachers, and the AI committee came together. And in our most recent meeting in December, we did a comparative analysis of other districts. And what I did was I reached out to other assistant superintendents, and I was able to gain 15 or 20 different, and they're all in draft forms, comparative AI plans similar to what we have. And I selected some that were significantly different, some that were similar. And in fact, there is one AI school committee policy, and it's the only one that I know of that exists. I'm not recommending that we consider at this time. In fact, MASC recommends that we don't create a school committee policy, just given the landscape, how it's changing. But what we did as a committee is we did a gallery walk. We looked at what other districts have, what recommendations they are putting out. And then on the next slide, what it allowed us to do is to think about what aspects these other districts have that resonated with us. And what are some concerns or some areas that other districts have that we particularly would want to improve in our own plans or roadmap. And some of it was on structure, some of it was on equity and access and student privacy, and just the challenge that teachers face of actually detecting AI. And then importantly, like our alignment to our core vision and mission, why we're here. And then on what this did is it allowed us then to look at other districts, what plans they have. Again, they're all in draft form, and stop and say, okay, now let's look at our own documents. And that's what I just handed out to you all. And what we found was some areas that we would like to improve. And again, this was like version 1.2. So this is a very beginning foundation. And what we're going to do next, and this is on the next slide, we are going, I surveyed the entire faculty, and I shared our plan to develop an AI implementation plan. And in order to do that, we found a professional development workshop. It's a 2-day workshop in the end of January. It's through an organization called COSIN. And out of the faculty that replied to the survey, we intentionally selected some of the department leaders at the high school, as well as representatives from Gibbons. And you can see it's heavy on tech, as one would expect, our director of technology, tech integration specialist, and then Peter from Mill Pond is a principal. So we have representation from the district, the school, teacher, department levels. And the plan here is this summit team will go get trained. And one of the outcomes through participation is you get a bad first draft. And that's better, I think, than having no draft at all. And it'll be an iterative process. And then after that, what our next step is to bring this draft of an AI implementation plan, or roadmap, we'll call it, back to the AI committee for version 2.0. And then we'll make changes and improvements. And that'll happen, and we anticipate doing that in February of this winter. And then the plan would be to roll it out, get feedback from teachers, get feedback from department leaders, get feedback from different principals, and then make those changes. So it'll be this back and forth to really improve our roadmap and share that out later this spring. So that's kind of a crash course in our timeline and what we're thinking about, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, I'll also give a note, that sort of bottom piece about the Westwood Educational Technology Fund. We've had a meeting. I was at one and Matt was at several, and they are really excited about finding a way to support us in helping us kind of use this as an innovative kind of strategy within our universe.
They are looking to collaborate with our school district and also support us through some grant funding.
Yeah. That's good.
Any questions? I'll start. Steve, do you have any questions?
No.
Jane?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to get a report back from this committee, because I know you've been doing lots of work. And thank you to everyone who's serving on this committee. And I know this is like a huge undertaking and really daunting. So I am so glad we're doing it and appreciate everyone who's involved. One thing that I hope the committee, or a few things I really hope the committee can keep in the front of their minds, is that I strongly believe and see at the college level where I work, that the expectation is that students will come into college and go out into the working world. So even for students who go straight to the working world, we see in the companies we partner with for co-op, they expect students to have AI literacy coming in to college and into the working world. And so it's critical that we don't take an approach of just preventing use.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think that is so, so, so important. The second thing, and this is kind of more in the weeds, but something that I'm seeing, and I've talked to you a little bit about, but I just want to reiterate, is I'm concerned with the lack of out-of-class writing that I'm seeing, particularly at the high school. That's where my kids both are now, so I don't know if it's the same pattern at the middle school, but it's not reflective of what the real world will be like, what the next step will be like. And I see a change from 2 years ago in the exact same class. You know, that I have one student who took 2 years ago and one student and another student taking it now, where there was out of class work 2 years ago and now there isn't. And that's a writing class, like an writing intensive course. So that's concerning to me. I also think this focus on only in-class writing, although I can see how it avoids generative AI use, it disadvantages students who work slower and need extra time. They have to, I don't know when they're doing their work. They're staying after school, and not everyone can produce on command in a classroom exclusively. And I also shared with you, Matt, but I want to say again, one of the things that's really important for students to learn, and that is like a core memory for me of school, is that pain of the writer's block and sitting there and having to not get on the phone with my friends, but do my writing, do my homework. And I know they're still doing homework, but writing is a different sort of block that sometimes students have when they're approaching it at home. And it's just really critical that we don't deny them that, not deny them that pain, but deny them that opportunity to develop those skills.
Productive struggle, I think.
Yeah. And they're going to have to do it later. And then I worry they'll turn to AI if they've never done it. I also want to say I have seen, and this is the last comment, sorry, some very innovative and cool assignments that, the teachers aren't saying, we're using a Simpsons episode for like strategic thinking because I know you can't use AI on this, but I am sure that's part of it, that you can't go and ask ChatGPT or something to analyze these kind of obscure, maybe like that was one assignment that my daughter had. And it was really cool. And it achieved what she needed to do in that assignment. And so I've seen so many examples of that in a lot of what both of my kids are doing. So I really commend the teachers, and I feel your pain. Like, I have problems with AI use in my classes too. And I know it takes a lot of time, but if we take an approach of prevention, there is a cost to that. What is the cost to not having our students write outside and not having them use it at all? So thank you so much for this Herculean effort.
Yeah, thank you. Allison, do you mind just going back a couple of slides because I want to highlight something? The self-reflection piece. So when we as a committee stopped and looked at what other districts were doing, the one thing that came through was like educator agency and the need for more kind of a consistent approach to using AI in the classroom for innovation. And I think the struggle that teachers face is assessing authenticity, right? And that's why some of them will try to isolate student writing in a way that they can accurately assess, is this voice from a student or is it the voice from a generative AI? And we were actually just having a conversation about that. It makes sense to get a baseline, but then to continue and to leverage AI, and not only AI, but like peer learning and through other important mediums so that students can continue to develop their own voice and to not offload that cognitive demand that generates authentic human learning and keeping the the human component central to AI use. I think that we've had a lot of kind of philosophical conversations about the time and the place and the ethics of AI use for adolescents, because we don't want them to like outsource their creative thinking ability and their critical thinking ability to a machine. So yeah, your points are spot on, and we're not alone in it. We're facing it across the Commonwealth and at the higher level as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
Any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Matt. I appreciate the methodical approach that you're taking. I think that's very good. I like where it's going. I'm looking forward to seeing the version 2 and 3. Just 2 comments. I do appreciate that you have the understanding of AI as one of the core parts of this. I would include parents as well in that. I think parents also need to be educated, especially the non-technical ones, on, because it's a new field, and I think they should also be aware of what kind of tools the kids should be using at home as well when they're doing their work. And the other thing I would recommend is that you create some kind of a means of communicating with the staff, the students, and the parents about new products that are coming up almost every day right now. I mean, I think we are at the precipice of probably just explosion. Somebody said we're probably going to see a Cambrian explosion of software. And not all of it will be good, but some of it can be very helpful. And I think that'll be good to keep the staff informed about the new tools they can use in the classroom. Instead of waiting months for new guidelines, maybe keep some kind of a newsletter or something that will be geared to all 3 groups. Students, parents, and teachers. And teachers, correct?
No,
that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's worth pointing out that at the start of the school year, we as a district did not restrict ChatGPT. And then upon looking at the data privacy agreements or the lack thereof, student devices no longer can access that through our firewalls that are provided through WPS. And what we do share, and Jerry, you probably know this, is Google products. So like Gemini or Notebook LM are compliant with necessary student privacy laws. So those are enabled on student devices 7 through 12.
Yeah, so on your school accounts, you can't use ChatGPT or Microsoft Edge Copilot anymore, but you can still use Gemini. Yeah.
I think one of the things we've batted around a little bit as a kind of pie in the sky idea is if money dropped out of the sky at us, say, the notion of a coach, an instructional coach who's really well versed in new tools, who can work alongside teachers to help them figure out how to navigate these dilemmas. Because I think, interestingly, Jane, to your point, a lot of the teachers who have kind of locked down writing in the classroom are doing it for exactly the reason that you said, which is they want to see kids' productive struggle, and they worry if I send it home, how am I going to prevent use of generative AI tools? So it's kind of this very difficult, how do you develop a class? How do you develop a set of expectations? How do you develop a deep enough understanding of what a student's authentic voice is so that you kind of know when you see what you see? But a kind of dedicated coach and some further investment in professional development, I think, is going to help us get there so we can really balance better.
Just to add on to that, in terms of from a financial perspective, most of the models that are available are subscription based and are free at this time for students. It's just then based on the frequency of use, then there is a subscription that's associated with it. But honestly, I see the greatest need that would have financial impact for us as a district would be on capacity building and professional development. So that we can have educators know time and place and best use. And that's such an evolving, changing field that we've been working with outside experts to come in, and we have some PD just this winter, and we had some back in the fall on that very idea.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for all the work and all the time that's been put into this. Really just one question here. I know that you said that there has been guidance from MASC, which is essentially that there is no guidance and that we shouldn't put anything out. Have they given any kind of indication when they might make some kind of announcement or when they might be putting out some kind of guidance?
Not from ASC, but from DESE. So DESE has some kind of rudimentary guidelines and frameworks. And they have just recently a series webinar. I attended one yesterday afternoon, and it's a six touch point webinar all about to increase educator capacity. But I have not seen any recommendations for policy, which is distinct from practice. And right now we want to focus on practice and how can we use this most effectively to help students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I think this is great. I mean, as a student, adding on to what Jane said, I think obviously this is a new time, especially for students in learning, and we obviously don't want them to lose their critical learning. So I do hope that this committee eventually goes on to do some great work even after I'm gone, and I think it's going to be really helpful for students to have a comprehensive AI policy, because I think for most of my time in high school, AI was there's sort of like a stigma around AI, and I think there wasn't a lot of discussion between like teachers and students on when AI was appropriate. So I think it's good that there's some guidelines that are coming around. And I had a question. Do any teachers in like the Westborough Public Schools currently have any AI detection tools that they can use to help them detect student work, or is that like outside of like the school's resources and bound? Not for me. I mean, for like.
Of course, not for you, Terry. Yes, but I think that's the wrong conversation. I don't really want to get into a punitive approach. I really want to leverage, we want to work with our teachers so that they can support students and innovate. And when you're getting into a back and forth about AI or not AI, it's really about academic integrity and honesty. And that can be a wounding experience, and it can damage relationships, both for the student and for the teacher, and then for the parents as well. It's messy. And I think it is an area that we are confronted with at society, but also specifically in school. So we just want to be thoughtful about, I mean, it would be very painful for a student to not use AI and to get accused of cheating when that has not happened. So I do think we want to think about our ethics of use, time and place, appropriateness, and also include some language in our student handbooks to reflect that. But just focusing on like a punitive approach, I think is kind of myopic.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely great to kind of come up with strategies to kind of integrate AI into like the education and kind of teach students, especially at Mill Pond, how to use it responsibly.
Yeah. Thank you.
I guess, Anita? Great. Sorry.
Quick mention. I'm going to do this quick, Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Big event coming. I would like to make sure everybody here and everybody out there in the wider community knows that we're once again part of kind of cooperatively organizing an event for Martin Luther King Day. I can't be there this year, unfortunately. Matt's been very integral in terms of organizing it. There's a fantastic guest speaker. She's awesome. I happen to know her, and I think she's going to do a great job. And I hope everybody shows up. It's great. So, and Q2 report. Turn it over to Anita.
Update. We are officially 6 months through FY 2026 year. Today we are in good standing. We have expended a little less than 50% of our budget. A large chunk of our payroll budget is expended in Q4, which is where our lump sum will come out. So the largest expense for payroll will come out in Q4. As of right now, there are 3 accounts that are trending in the negative. Our special education account due to private school costs, our special education transportation costs, and also actually your department budget because of their redistricting fees that we have associated with that. Anyone have any particular questions or comments? Or I'll start with Steve.
Yeah, I do. Given the prospect of some significant shortfalls, as you've pointed out in the column of surplus and deficit, what are our plans to bring the budget back into balance? What do we do to, in effect, find approximately $100,000 to offset these negatives?
Those two line items, they basically change every week to every month, depending on students that are coming to district. Transportation costs are no longer needed. That's a very moving targeted number. So next quarter, when I give you the Q3 update, we'll have a more precise number on where we'll land at that point.
That doesn't answer my question. We have to act now to figure out what we're going to do to find money to offset the negatives. To the extent that the bleeding stops, based on what you just said. But at this point, these are shortfalls. So we need to do something to find out how we're going to meet this. We all know that the school committee's budget is a balanced budget. We cannot deficit spend. So I think there's more work to do here to figure out how we're going to do it. So those are my comments, and I look forward to how we're going to find $100,000 that we didn't have.
So just to answer your question, the school department budget is bottom line budget. So if there are any line items that are trending in the positive, that would offset any.
Well, that would
Negatives
require
that we
a
have.
transfer as voted by the school committee to do that, to bring the accounts back in line, i.e. what it means is that we would agree as a school committee that there would be a surplus in a particular budget line to do that.
So we legally don't have to do a budget transfer since we're bottom line budget.
Well, that's new to me. It's still, if we have a shortfall, it has to be a balanced budget.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's not, not unusual within school budgets to see a fair amount of volatility, especially in special ed. This is pretty common in my old district where often budgets like curriculum, unfortunately, sorry, Matt, was a place where we would pull to offset if there was a shortfall in one place, because although it's very important and central to what we do, special education is around student service delivery primarily. So those are strategies that are very typically used. We do want to, and we're working to try and make sure that our budget categories are as accurate as they can be and are well forecast as they can be, so that we can land the plane, and we will land the plane. We will not have a deficit. So I trust Anita for that. She did a great job with that last year.
I guess my point being is this, that there are some things that we could defray. For example, certain maintenance that we might not do.
Right.
Certain purchases that we might not make.
Yes.
That becomes the kitty to pay for budget shortfalls. And really, that's what I'm asking, is that I don't imagine in any one place you're going to find $100,000. Or for that matter, that somehow or another, instantaneously, things change in these particular accounts that in fact become, let's say, a spending trend that is positive, and that gives us money back in those particular accounts. So given the fact that some school districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have had real disasters this year, my interest in answering this question and being close to it relative to the interests of the school committee is simply important, because I don't want to be a member of a school district that goes down the road at Whitman-Hanson, or for that matter, trying to remember what it is. It's one of the town's cities actually on the South Shore.
Brockton.
Pardon?
Brockton.
Yeah, which was what, $20 million in the hole, 14 million in the hole?
I think slightly less, but yeah, around there.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Anyway, whatever we do for process here, I would like to make sure that in fact we don't go down that road too far.
I can assure you, as a superintendent, I probably want that even less, given the fate of superintendents in that situation.
Well, we won't want you to go there either.
Yeah, we don't want it. None of us want that, and Anita certainly doesn't want it. So do know that this is kind of, school budgets do this. There is
I know.
often a lot
I've
of
been
play.
on the school
Yeah.
committee long
Yeah.
enough to know that we have shortfalls and we balance it with
Right.
different things,
Right.
particularly using the method that I just talked about, which
Right.
is to delay things that could be delayed
Yes.
to create the funds so that in fact we don't go into red.
One of the things I appreciate about our finance department, and I'll give a big shout out to Paige Thomas, who's our assistant director, is they do a very kind of detailed tracking kind of week to week of exactly where we are in terms of kind of what the bottom line looks like, where the money is, where it's not. So there's a lot of attention paid. And, I know it's, we can talk further about ways to kind of show you that process so that you have some confidence going into the end of the year. But,
That's fine.
Okay.
But obviously, at this point, it's a concern. Good.
Jakub.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question on the SPED and the transportation costs. Is the increase due to the increased number of students or increase in the cost of tuition and the cost of transportation? Is the number of students as you expected it to be, or did it change?
So it's the costs,
Okay, so it's not that we have new students.
correct? It's the overall cost that has increased.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We actually have fewer students this year than next year and anticipate right around the same number for next year. So.
Just one question. So I know you talked about payroll and that is primarily paid out in Q4, which is why we see such a large surplus there. I am assuming that it looks like the opposite is true of the school spending, that they front load their spending more so, and then it tapers off in Q3 and Q4.
Yes.
Certainly, see that across the schools, so no concern there necessarily. But is there any reason for concern just around Armstrong, given that they have spent so much of their money, almost 100% of it?
No,
in the first 6
because
months?
we actually spoke to them yesterday about that, and they front load their entire budget in usually Q1. So it's fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you look at the technology budget, I had a conversation with John just the other day. If you notice, it looks like there's a significant surplus there, but he does this for timing purposes, where he finds it the best deals to be had are late in the fiscal year. So he kind of delays some of the bulk purchasing there to get the best value.
Glad he does.
Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the last item here.
Great. Do you want to do a quick update about CPC?
I will.
We have some nice news to share.
Yes, some happy news. So the school department, we put in for an application for $150,000 for a grant for our Hastings playground through the CPC back in October. So we got through phase 1, and then this past, was it Monday that we went?
Yes.
Monday evening, they voted, and we were awarded a $150,000 grant.
Great.
So that will be confirmed at town meeting, because it does have to be approved by the taxpayers at town meeting. So the 150 will offset the total cost of the playground that we're anticipating to be anywhere between $600,000 and $800,000.
And that project we're talking about, not for this fiscal year, but for the next year. So we're looking to go out for that at town meeting 2027. And that's part of the capital.
Great news.
Congratulations.
So I want to thank Anita and Julia DeGata. And actually, we got great support from the community. So the Civic Club, the Rotary Club, Westborough TV, there was youth football, I think, also. Some of the youth sports wrote letters of support in terms of just upgrading the playground, because all these groups kind of see the kind of vital nature of having that space for kids. So it's a nice feeling. A couple quick updates here. 115 East Main Street, that is that parcel of land adjacent to the preschool that we've talked about. As you requested, I reached out to John Foskett. He has drafted a letter. I shared a draft of that with you. Later tonight, I'll just ask for a kind of final vote for him to authorize he will send it to Christy Williams to sort of initiate the process, but he did some background research on what type of transfer it is. And that's been very helpful. And I thought we'd give Jerry an opportunity to do a student update early on here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry.
Just a couple things happened in the district. So on Sunday, January 11th, so this Sunday, it's going to be Westborough Day at the Worcester Whalers. So I think they're going to send kids to watch the Worcester Whalers, and there's reduced tickets. So if there's anyone who's interested, they can purchase tickets online. And the first 150 students to line up are going to get to, I believe, high five the players in the tunnel, which is pretty cool. the Westborough High School band is also holding a fundraiser for a European trip to Denmark and Germany, and they're raising funds through a Domino's fundraiser where you can purchase gift cards to Domino's online. And there's more details available on Parent Square. And then lastly, for any junior parents who may be watching, junior night was tonight at Westborough High School at the auditorium. So if you weren't able to attend, I believe the guidance office should be sending out more information through an email, and your kids can probably let you know more about that if you're interested. That's all.
Thanks. All right. On to discussion items, I think.
Yep.
So I put these two things on the table for discussion. The first I shared with you had to do with the FY 26 to 27, not FY 26, it should be school year. My apologies. 26 to 27 calendar. This is a calendar that we voted prior. Unfortunately, I got word that we voted it and had missed a provision in the educator's contract that does not allow us to have their first day of work be prior to the Monday before Labor Day. Labor Day is extremely late this year. And so unfortunately, we do have to move the calendar by 2 days forward. So the revised calendar, I'll put on up here. This is a little painful for me because it bumps us. Originally, we were looking to be out of school here on the 17th. This bumps us up to Monday, the 21st as a half day. Now, I don't want to get too worried about it because typically there's a snow day somewhere in there. But still, kind of a bummer, but it is contract language that exists right now. We are in collective bargaining, and we will certainly discuss this. But for now, we need to set the calendar because it's an expectation that parents and staff need to plan. So,
I think that it'd be appropriate that if everyone's okay, that we go ahead and take that vote now. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to vote the revised calendar.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to add a comment. I think this is a good example of why we need change to the calendar. I think ending the school year on the 4th week at the minimum in June is problematic, and it was pointed out by faculty, by parents. I think it's terrible. I wish we had alternative option here where we at least have a chance to end the school year in the 3rd week. I understand, we have the upcoming calendar subcommittee, and I hope the committee will take this into consideration when planning forward, because I don't think this is a good calendar. It's exactly what the teachers and parents were afraid of happening, and we are now in the 4th week at the minimum, possibly with just 1 day on Monday, which I think. Anyhow, I made all my comments in the last 2 years, and I think this calendar is just to me it's just a validation of my concerns with the calendar. They are right there in front of us. So again, hopefully the subcommittee will think on this one.
Yeah. So, and additionally, I do hope that we are in collective bargaining. I'm hopeful that the WEA is open to looking at that language that they have in place that sort of ties us into the week before Monday rule, because I think if we look at that, we may find ways to have more flex there too. So,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
4-1-0. Okay. I guess the mid-year update.
great. So I gave this to you in memo form. I'll kind of go through essentially the same information in slide form for the viewing public. I wanted to give you kind of a quick snapshot update of where we are with regard to our strategic priorities. I sort of talked to you about this new set of goals at the start of the year, and this is really a progress report. In addition to this and to the memo, the document itself is kind of live, and we do revisit it as a leadership team to sort of indicate where we are and do some changes in terms of whether we're in progress, things are accomplished, things aren't quite yet started, so you can see that live as well. On the academic front, this is one of our main pillars. We're looking really in three big buckets. One is instructional coherence, another is support for all learners, and the third is technology practices. I think Matt talked a lot about the technology, so I'm going to sort of leave that be for now. In terms of support and student support, we had a number of things that are moving along nicely. At Gibbons, they've really moved toward common assessment and common unit assessments in math, so some real alignment there. That's both instructional coherence and support, because by doing that, they're really creating a situation where they can work together as a team to identify students who are in need of additional support and put plans in place to help them. Mill Pond is trying out new teacher support team practices, and our English language department is really focused in on how to work with students that are sort of not making as much progress as they would like. Instructionally, a lot of the other coherent work is around literacy. So I'm going to do a little more of a deep dive into that in the next slide. So our early grade teachers are doing professional development around literacy with their coordinator, as are the Mill Pond teachers. But Matt has also started a pre-K to 3 literacy steering committee, and the goal of that committee is to guide our transition into evidence-based instruction, including materials and resources. Some of this is in response to pending legislation at the state level, but honestly, some of it's in response to hearing from teachers about kind of the challenges of pulling resources together too. So I think it's going to do both for us, both get us in line with what's coming down the pike at the state level, but also help students really and help teachers in terms of shoring up kind of more resources for them to have at their disposal. We also talked a little bit about kind of pathways and expanding opportunities for kids. We have an advisory pilot program happening now at the high school. We believe that's going to either go full launch next year or a more extended pilot. Kind of trying to figure that out right now. It depends on time a little bit. Matt, together with Alex Pilger, has launched this committee for MyCap, which stands for the My Career and Academic Plan. It's sort of a program and structure to get kids thinking about career development early on and to think about how they're planning for their futures. Is that a fair summary, Matt? I had to do it really shortly.
No, that's spot on. It's 7 through 12, and it is funded by DESE. It was a competitive grant that we applied to and we're fortunate to get funding for.
That's great. And then you see here, this is a slide from both our teachers, but also our leadership team are going to be doing work with Sarah Otto around our support for multilingual learners. And that has been fantastic so far. And the work with the leadership team is really about how do we help make sure that as we're going around doing supervision and evaluation, that we're working directly with teachers to make sure those strategies that folks learn about PD actually happen every day in the classroom. In terms of the second bucket of caring and supporting schools, a couple things happening related to digital wellness. So the middle school launched this tech-free lunch periods. If you recall, they used to have Chromebooks available for middle school kids at lunch. They decided to try and kind of pull back on that, see if they could encourage more interaction, more socializing, because sometimes a Chromebook can be very isolating, and they're seeing some great results with that. They have board games, and they're seeing kind of nice interactive social development, frankly. Our wellness team are also partnering with the Metro West Foundation around this digital wellness initiative. That's part of a grant program. Sarah, as you're aware, I think you were in the committee of 1,000, right? We've got a wellness committee that just launched this year with over 50 educators and community members. That's going to be a great undertaking. The goal of that committee is to kind of look at our policy and look at how we are, first of all, is our policy up to date? And secondly, are we implementing the policy that we have? In addition, we have folks from Sandy Hook Promise. That's an organization that really encourages school climate and culture initiatives around belonging and welcoming all students into the environment. They have assemblies planned at the middle school and high school in March. And finally, we are looking at attendance through some data tracking to sort of figure out how can we start to make an impact in areas where we're seeing student attendance as a concern. At the high school, they're using their student support team at a model to do that work. On the removing barriers to learning. I think we talked about this before. We do, Chris Martin and Scott Henderson are working on this web-based application. So we've got this sort of thing almost up and running where they're going to start to get students to record the names, or in the case of little kids, parents to record names to get into Power School so that those names are accessible to teachers so people know how to pronounce people's names. Or people like me who don't see kids every day but have to sort of figure that out on the fly. It's a great resource for those of us who don't have the day-to-day interaction. We have got the calendar committee up and running, and we're spending a lot of time looking at the pre-K to K transition, and I mentioned that earlier. So that's we've had our elementary principals attended a workshop through DESE, and we've got some site visits planned with our early child coordinator and student services coordinators. And then finally, this notion of multi-tiered systems of support. It's the idea of a structure where, tier one is the classroom, what happens for all students all the time. It's kind of making sure that what we do in that classroom reaches the largest number of kids possible. And then tier two is things that you would add on to a regular classroom experience, maybe like reading intervention or some types of specialized support. Tier three gets into special education, those kinds of services, and thinking about how we use that structure to, in a kind of thoughtful and systematic way to make sure we're not missing anyone. That's really the goal. And we have Alan Bloom's team coming in to work with our administrative team on kind of where are we at with our structures and our systems, and where do we need to make some improvements. And then finally, this is on the kind of community outreach side. We've got some wonderful programs. Mill Pond is doing this beautifully in terms of partnerships with the Audubon Society, the veterans, town arborists, looking at ways to kind of continue to promote authentic learning. We've reestablished this connection with the Westwood Educational Technology Fund, and we're very excited about that. And they're excited about it too, which is great. Anybody out there who's interested in joining, they're a small but mighty group. Our team of Roger Anderson and Kim Tynan have started pushing out these wellness bites as a way to kind of encourage family and community engagement around the topic of wellness. And then our kindergarten committee is doing outreach to parents to try and get feedback about that kindergarten transition process. What works well, what doesn't work so well, where do we need to improve? And kind of along those same lines, our LPAC and CPAC are two groups. LPAC is our English Language Parents Advisory Councils, and CPAC is a Special Ed Parents Advisory Council. Both of those groups, we've got some things moving, which is great. They've been a little dormant for a while. So Tisha had a meeting earlier in the fall with LPAC. It was very small, but she's optimistic she'll increase every time. So she's got another one planned for February. CPAC, there was a coffee in the fall, and then we are very grateful that right here in town, Leslie, who's a kind of higher up in the, I can't remember the organization, but they do outreach about the value of CPAC and about special education rights for parents. So there'll be a workshop available coming up next week. And then finally, we're really leaning into how do we get parents involved in processes that are important. The calendar committee, the wellness committee, the Gibbons principal search, and the redistricting process. We really tried to tap into ways to help parents kind of come and participate, and hopefully from that get folks involved in participating on a more regular basis. The fourth bucket is really the kind of financial and operational stability. We're continuing to work on moving the budget into the chart of that kind of DESE chart of accounts. It's a longer and more drawn out process than we thought it was going to be, in part because we're trying to align with the town. But they are putting in a warrant article related to this, which I think is going to help move the ball forward more quickly. But in the meantime, we have tried to reorganize those salary lines to be more clear and transparent. You know a lot about the redistricting process. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. And then in terms of long-range planning, we really have partnered with the town around integrating our capital planning with theirs so there are no surprises. So as much as possible, trying to surface what are the needs coming up, when are they going to come up, and how do we kind of partner so that the community can plan effectively and people out there who are taxpayers don't get hit all at once with capital needs. I was very happy about the Special Education Reserve Fund getting passed this fall, And, that's a fund we are hoping stays a reserve. We are not planning on touching that unless we absolutely need to, and nor do we have a plan to put money into it in the short term. We would start to talk about feeding that fund in FY27.
Also, can I ask you a question? So,
Sure.
if we had money in that fund right now, could that be used for shortfall?
I don't think so. It has to be unanticipated. Usually it's things like movement, like you have something you didn't, there's no way to see coming. And we really would only use it if we couldn't sort of solve the problem a different way. That's, the goal is really a more catastrophic situation to save it for that.
So I have a question.
Sure.
In the terms of moving into the DESI set of accounts, it's my understanding that revolving funds have to go away. What is the status of revolving funds in the new DESI program? I know that we're authorized to have them. Hopefully they will be retained.
I think they're separate. In the district I came from, we use the DESI chart of accounts for the operating budget, and the revolving accounts were just a separate entity.
Okay, so they would continue to operate the way they are.
Absolutely. And there was a kind of connection in that funding from revolving could be an offset to the main budget. So for example, money we bring in for fees for facilities use could offset our facilities department costs, like the cost of custodial overtime, for example.
Okay. What's the timeline for getting the DESI set of accounts set up?
Get it done?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Within the year?
Within the year, yeah. I mean, the problem is, one of the challenges, I gotta say, is that everything has to run through Munis, and Munis is a shared system with the town. So we really can't totally unilaterally, we can start to slowly adjust the organization of how it's going to be, but we can't really pull the trigger until the town's ready to roll.
And basically, it's their schedule then?
It's their schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think they're deeply interested, so I feel like progress is being made.
Good.
Areas for growth. I wanted to point out, a place where we haven't gotten as far as I would like has to do with planning around safety and security. And I want to say adamantly, I don't think we have a problem where this is concerned. However, I think it's an area I always want to be thinking about working on. I met with our resource officer yesterday, Chip Dapley, not as much around these particular buckets here, but a little bit about some more structural things. So we are talking about ways we can learn from the sort of unplanned evacuation event that we had in the fall at the high school to try and shore up a few things there around doorways, around sound notification. So we've got a punch list of that we're working through. Additionally, Detective Dapley brought forward a concept around some access to video by the dispatch at the police department for the sake of incident intervention. So finding ways to make sure we're really partnering with police and fire. So we are working through those kinds of they're less on documentation, more sort of structural things. But my hope is to really get moving on this, especially once we wrap up redistricting, so we can have these sort of document pieces in place for the fall. And finally, just thank you to the committee. Thank you to, most importantly, to the entire leadership team. As I was kind of going through the process of looking at everybody's notes and pulling this together, it's truly, I went through a list of the names, and it's truly like the whole team effort, and a lot of educators throughout the district kind of all pulling together to get a lot of different things done this year. So I'm excited. I appreciate your hearing me out this very late night. So.
Thank you so much. Any questions, Steve? Do you have any other questions or
No.
Jane?
No, it just, it hadn't occurred to me before, but in this presentation, it did. I think it's so great that we're inviting parents and community members onto all these different committees. And I think that's a great way to shore up those connections. So thank you.
Jacob?
Yeah, just two quick questions. I read the document, and I was just curious about two items. One was the changes in the unit assessments at Gibbons.
Yes.
If you could speak to that, what exactly is changing and why? And the second one was what were the outcome of the visit to Northbridge
Yes.
school system with regard to the cell phone use?
Great questions. So in terms of unit assessments, I think the goal is to align end of course or end of unit assessments so that it allows you to, first of all, calibrate classroom to classroom. So if Anita and I are both teaching 8th grade math, we want to make sure that students who finish our unit on proportional reasoning both have the same sort of skill set going forward. But it also allows us to look at data together and have kind of really interesting conversations about where our students are. If her students do better in some areas than mine, I can sort of say, well, what did you do in your class? And finally, in terms of identifying students who may need intervention help, if we are aligned, we can group those students, work with them together. So you're not sort of picking kids off haphazardly. You can actually do things more programmatically. So that's the goal.
So that's going to be implemented next year?
They're starting that now, and they had started working on it a little bit last year. It's Meredith Innes, who's the math department chair there, is fantastic and is doing really great work there. In terms of the cell phone visit, something had happened. Our unplanned evacuation thing happened, so I was unable to go on that visit. Matt went. So.
I did, yeah. So we had a team of about 5-7 educators, as well as a parent community member joined us from Westborough Connects. And we toured the school. We were there before they opened. We met with the principal. It's a different population, much smaller school with one main point of egress. And it was interesting. We took some videos to see all the students come in, and they're pretty well trained. It's in some ways it's kind of like going through TSA, where they didn't have metal detectors, but the students were lined up and you know what to do. And some students voluntarily, or maybe were told to turn in their phones. A good number of students drove, and they just said, phones in the car, phones in the car. And then they did have some of the pouches, and the students held up the pouches to show that they were sealed and the phone was inside. But I think we timed it within 6 or 7 minutes. All the kids were in and through. And I'm sorry, I just said 6, 7. I knew it the second it came out of my mouth. So we did talk about it afterwards, and we debriefed. There is a cost for the Yonder pouches. It is it's expensive, $40,000, $50,000. And the challenge for Westborough High School and for Gibbons is the multiple points of entry, because it does require faculty or administration to have a duty to monitor and to supervise it. On the back end, at the dismissal point, it didn't seem so man intensive in terms of faculty supervision, because on the walls they had screws, and you just go in 5 minutes. The principal said him and the assistant principals would go on and screw on these magnets, and the kids were trained, and there were 5 or 6 of them at different heights in different areas, so it was more decentralized. And he said and this was a good learning, they kept one in a police station that was open 24 hours a day. So student forgets, needs their cell phone, long weekend, holiday weekend, they can go remote to a different offsite campus if the school is locked and get access to their device.
Oh, that's nice.
So, I mean, there's some things that we learned, some things that we're considering. I think that the logistical hurdle is significant. It can be overcome, but we just need to be thoughtful about it.
One note I would say, Kim Tynan, who was on the trip, talked a little bit about the fact of kind of everybody pouring in together in this one central place, and there being people there that you have to kind of interact with. They had really turned it into a positive, sort of making sure every kid had like a positive interaction with an adult as they're walking into the school building, which I thought was kind of neat. I feel like our team does that anyway, but this kind of formalizes it.
Yeah, there were a lot of high fives, and they showed up at the basketball game. So it was that kind of like small school connection that, it was nice to see. And they've had a lot of visitors because they were one of the first schools to really go with this approach. And I think they were actually on the news too.
We will, at any rate, kind of in terms of where we are in process, I think we had talked about it. We have a lot of things going on, decided we need to kind of get through K3 redistricting. This is another thing on the let's do the bulk of the work for that, and then we'll regroup with this group. And by that point, maybe we'll have some update from the legislature too, so we'll know kind of what the parameters of the law.
Thank you. Looking forward to it, and I'm happy that you pointed out that you want to prioritize safety drills, training. I'm looking forward to updates on that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tim, do you have anything?
No questions. Just thank you, Allison, and to the team for all your work on this, and especially all the educators, getting it done on the ground every day. So thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions on that. So if I were to move to the next item, I don't believe there's anyone here for citizens request. And we've got school committee reports. Steve, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I have two things to report. The first one is myself as former, current chair, I guess, of the school building committee, received a document from the MSBA this week, which basically was an accounting of the various contingency accounts that were used during the project, for which they have to be certified that they either are within the funding part of the MSBA process or not. So that is now a document that was received not only by myself, but it seemed like 100 others in this town also got it at the same time. But the activity is for me, I guess, eventually to sign off on that document to the MSBA. The significance of it is that by virtue of their certification of the use of the contingency funds in the original budget, that then once those contingencies are then moved into the supported MSBA money, it now gets aggregated with the remaining funding from the state relative to the MSBA. So in due course, a couple of weeks, Vertex is handling that particular process. There'll be a final sign-off document that we will get. Historically, there may be many signatures, myself as chair, as well as Board of Selectmen, Allison, Anita perhaps, and whoever else, I guess. But anyway, that will finally move the final payment from the MSBA to the town. And then we'll be done with the MSBA. The second issue is on the 3rd of December, the school committee created a subcommittee to deal with the recommendation of the demolition of the Gibbons Fieldhouse. That committee did act on the 18th of December. The subcommittee viewed the building and ultimately is recommending that rather than demolish the building for a projected dollar amount of $125,000, that in fact we retain the building. And during that period of time, I was able to get a bid from a qualified bidder who has done much work in town as well as for the town's DPW in the amount of $31,000 to put a new roof on the building and to fix the carpentry. The difference between earlier quotes and this one is that it would be a membrane roof rather than a tar and gravel roof. But it comes with a warranty that is significant in the sense that we can get the building to continue to perform for many years in the future with the expenditure of $31,000 plus a contingency of $5,000, so that makes $36,000 for the roof and the carpentry, and an additional $10,000 in order to remove some of the petitions in the building that make it a little less useful than it could be. And so the difference between the total to restore the building to use for a continued period of time at $46,000 would generate a savings between that proposal and the earlier demolition proposal of $125,000 of a savings of $79,000. And therefore, I have forwarded to Allison as well as to the other members of the school committee the opportunity to make that decision tonight, and also a draft of a warrant article in the amount of $46,000, and to abandon the idea of demolishing the Gibbons Fieldhouse. So I would like to put that before the school committee for a motion, and I would make that motion.
That's a motion. I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I I guess real quick, and obviously appreciate all the time and effort that you put in, Steve. I guess maybe just a point of order. Are we allowed to vote on something that we didn't publish on the agenda beforehand?
I don't see why not. Certainly, the outcome of the committee was announced not tonight, but it was certainly available to the public based on the decision on December the 3rd, as well as the activity of the subcommittee.
Yeah, and I guess I just raised this because I did have the benefit relatively recently of going to one of the trainings and talking about some of the ethics, and I thought that they had said something about that the public had to be given essentially like a reasonable notice, so that if they had any curiosity, they were able to attend. So I guess my understanding was that we would have to still publish something just so that the public knew if we were talking about it, but just raising.
Well,
that.
I would suggest that there was no notice relative to the activity of demolishing the building. And so that's how it became a subject before the school committee. Now, the action would be, and if you wish to save it for a later date, is to accept the recommendation of the subcommittee and then vote on the warrant article. But I think we need direction to Allison in regards to warrants on the town warrant.
I think maybe to be on the safe side, Steve, it's best for us to put it on the next agenda and then we can vote both of those items. That way the memo and whatnot can be available if that.
It's fine.
My understanding is that the town warrant is kind of currently being formed. There's a placeholder there related to the Gibbons Field House for that larger amount, but we have the ability to amend it. So if the committee chooses to amend it to be a repair instead of demolition for a lower amount, I'm sure everyone will be quite happy with that outcome. And I appreciate the effort that people put into digging into it and looking at alternatives. So thank you for that.
So Allison, we can have it on the next agenda, please?
Absolutely, yes.
That would be great.
I would still request a vote on the recommendation tonight. I think we can do that.
So what would be the motion? Maybe you
To
could.
accept the recommendation of the subcommittee in regards to maintaining the building versus demolition.
Okay, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0. Okay.
Thank you. I'll make sure
Thank
that's on there.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And then, but that was part of your report, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jane, do you have
So there were two items.
Yeah. Jade, do you have?
No, nothing to report.
Yeah, cool.
Nothing to report other
Okay.
than the work that Steve already summarized.
Nothing to report.
Jerry? Oh, you already did it, that's right.
Move Jerry up to the top. That's okay.
No,
I
it's
feel like, every once in a while he might need to go. Or maybe,
Yeah, I was wondering if he had to leave early or something.
It's pretty late,
Yeah, that's okay. And I have nothing to report. I think the last order of business we have is to accept, vote on the minutes, and also, did we already do the vote for the transfer of the property? No,
No,
I don't
we
think we
talked about
did.
it.
So
we
vote,
talked about it. I think you kind of authorized me to go talk to John Foskett. You now have a draft.
Yeah.
Just if you can vote to
Yeah.
have him send a letter.
yep, so if we can do the vote for the transfer first, if somebody wants to make a motion,
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0, and then we just need to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of December the 17th, 2025.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0-0. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0-0. Yeah.